I'm going to the store, Joey. My mom called as she grabbed her coat. Don't answer the door for anyone. I'll be back by 6. Now that I had just turned 10 years old a few months ago, my mom was finally comfortable with leaving me home alone while she ran errands. And I loved the new freedom. The first time she had left me home alone, however, she gave me a long speech about the dangers of bad men who could come for me while I was alone. They watch for the parents to leave. Then they come knock on the door, she said. And when you open it, they grab you and kidnap you, or worse. So no matter what people say to you through that door, you are not to open it. Do you understand me, Joey? I paid no attention to her, of course. No one ever came to our house, even when she was home. Today especially, after the recent snowstorm, I couldn't imagine anyone being out and about. So I continued sitting on the couch, glued to the TV screen, as if my mom had never left. About an hour passed before I got up, at a commercial break to use the restroom. Hoping to not miss my show, when it came back on, I hurriedly jogged to the bathroom. But just as I passed the front door, I was caught off guard by the sound of my doorbell ringing. I froze in place for a second. Quickly, though, I regained my composure and remembered my mom's words. Do not answer the door. Simple as that. I thought to myself, hurrying to the bathroom. As I stood over the toilet, the doorbell rang once more. I ignored it again and continued with my business. When I turned on the faucet to wash my hands, the knocking started. It came in bursts of 3 solid knocks with a few seconds in between. Whoever this is really wants someone to answer, I thought. Panic began creeping up in my mind, but I reassured myself with my mother's advice that all I had to do was not open the door and I'll be safe. I walked back to the couch, but the knocking continued. I began thinking about what could happen if I didn't open the door. If that was a bad man outside, he could break a window, or he could try to get in the back door. Or he could wait outside for my mom to come home and hurt her. 3 more swift knocks came. My legs trembling, I looked in the direction of the door. To the left of the front door, a tall window stood, but the blinds were shut. As the knocking continued, I slowly began walking towards the front door. I had to see who was there. I had to see if it was a bad man outside. I could feel my heart beating in my throat as I stood a few feet from the source of the loud knocking. I inched closer to the window after collecting myself and mustering up my courage. I slit the blinds ever so slightly. Outside stood Gary, the neighborhood mailman. I let out a huge sigh of relief and chided myself for being so paranoid. I stood by the window, letting my heartbeat slow down, and my breath returned to normal. As I stood there, Gary turned towards the window and noticed me peeking through the blinds. He smiled warmly and waved. But as my hand touched the cold metal lock to open the door for the mailman, I paused. My mom had still told me not to open the door for anyone. But she always talked to Gary in the mornings. She even brought him a batch of homemade cookies last Christmas. He's just here to do his job anyways. I turned the lock and pulled open the door. The cold winter air blew into the house as Gary stood and smiled. "Hey, Joey," he said, grinning. "Now I got a letter here for your mom that I was told to specifically deliver directly to the house." He reached into his bag and pulled out the small white envelope. "And to my understanding, Joey, this is very important, so don't lose it." I was very confused, but I outstretched my hand to take the letter. He extended his arm out to me with the letter in his hand, but as his hand approached mine, the letter dropped out of his hand. His hand, however, continued moving towards me. He raised his hands towards my head and placed his thumb on my forehead. He looked me in the eyes as everything went black. My eyelids shot open as I sat up in my bed. I frantically looked around. No way it could have been a dream. It was too real, I thought. But here I was lying under the sheets of my bed. I checked the clock. It was 7 a.m. I jumped out of bed and ran to the kitchen where my mom was preparing breakfast. How long had I been asleep? I asked her. My heartbeat was racing again. My mom looked at me with a puzzled expression. Since about 9 o'clock last night, she responded, raising her eyebrow. Why are you asking? When did you get back from the store? I asked, still panicking. About 6, Joey. Are you okay? I sat down at the table, placing my head in my hands. Thoughts raced through my head. Was any of that real? Why can't I remember anything? What did the mailman do to me? Mom, what was I doing when you came home? You were watching TV. Joey, you're starting to worry me. What's going on? She placed a plate of bacon and eggs in front of me. You should eat. I couldn't eat. I felt sick to my stomach. Joey, something's going on and you're not telling me. She stared worriedly at me. Joey, look at me. She held my chin and turned my face towards her. I sat silently as she looked into my eyes. Joey, she started. Who did you let into the house? I froze. Joey, I'm going to ask you again. Who did you let into the house? I opened my mouth to speak, but words couldn't come out. She raised her voice this time. Joey, tell me who you let into the house. I barely made out a whisper. I thought he was the mailman. My mom sprang out of her chair. You thought it was the mailman? She screamed. She struck me on the cheek with the back of her hand, knocking me onto the floor. My mom had never hit me before. I stared in horror as she stood over me with a crazy expression. I'm sorry, it was an accident, I yelled. You never should have let them in, Joey. You never should have let me in.